I'd like to open this video with a quick introduction, and then we'll move along to my introducing you to my first computer, or rather the first computer I've ever used. And then we'll come back in here for a tour of everything that's on the wall, everything that's beneath the wall. You'll see that my collection is very much 6502 focused, just because that's where I started. I do have some 68000 machines. I have a next workstation that you'll see is a 68040 base machine. And I'm mentioning that now because I have one other machine which I neglected to highlight, which is a Foenix Retro A2560K. And that's looks a bit like a rugged laptop, but it's a keyboard based or an integrated keyboard system that looks a little bit like an Amiga A600. It's an integrated system with a hard drive, a floppy disk, several megs of memory. It's quite an impressive machine, but that's not in this room either. Quickly, before I jump into this, I'd like to share with you the reason why I'm here. I really wanted to play games as a kid, right? These systems ran arcade games. Arcades were run off the same processors as the systems that we used in our youth, and that was really the driver. I also want to share with you an article that may be of interest to you, which is the September-October 2022 issue of Phoenix Rising, which I dubbed the early arcade issue. This is issue 3, so this is going back almost 2 years ago. I probably started writing in the summer of 2022. And this is, I believe, a 32-page issue. At the time, the C256 dev board was just out. The F256 was not yet released. And what I'll do is I'll give you a quick view of the arcade sections of this, just because they tie in, and you can download this issue via a link in the description. So the three things I'll point to here quickly: Grand Track 10. That was an interesting game, right? Really early driving game. We'll talk about some of the classic arcades, and we'll talk about arcade before arcade, which is Sega's electromechanical systems. But if you bear with me for just 3 minutes before I start the tour, I want to give you a quick run through of these articles. In the beginning, of course, we didn't talk about microprocessor-based machine. These were TTL-based logic-based computers, if you can call them that. And similar to Ben Eater's 8-bit breadboard computer, consisted of all types of digital chips, which were TTL based. The first games were that way, so I won't go into it too deeply, except to show just a couple highlights here, including the fact that ROMs were extremely expensive, and they tended to use or feature groups of diodes that they would put on the screen as graphics. So that was a very interesting aspect of kind of the very beginning of putting these games together, what was required. Here's a picture of, I think this is computer space. So anyway, I'll fly by this just to say this is some of what the background of these microprocessor-based systems kind of looked like. I will tell you that one of the most recent games you may be familiar with is Monaco GP, which was a Sega game that was kind of the granddaddy of all discrete logic systems from my perspective. I'm moving down to the kind of the anchor article. This is an article about classic arcade, and it talks about the very beginning, which was Space Invaders. And we all know and have played it and have seen and know quite a bit about it. But I kind of parlay the discussion about electromechanical titles, and I'll show you those on page 13, down to the release of a game in 1972 called Invaders, which was an electromechanical arcade game. This is, of course, kind of penny arcade, otherwise known as nothing in this machine but stepper motors, servos, solenoids or coils, mechanical controls, etc. And some 5 years later, that game in theory was this machine, Space Invaders by Taito. So that's when things really took off. And again, there's a bit of history here. There's things to click on for further reading and review. And then I move on to back in '82, where I talk about kind of my favorite games across 5 years, starting 1980, 81, 82, 83, and 84. And I go through some of those. There's a lot of information here, which if you know any of these games, might be of interest. If you don't know the games, you might be interested to learn a little bit about them. There's also, I believe, a quote in here from, I'm not sure if it's in this one or not, but Bill Mensch. I spoke to Bill Mensch, or exchanged mail from him at least, on something I was researching. So that may be in here. Not as important, of course. Going through Mario Brothers, Marble Madness, and then finally arcade before arcade. So this is the kind of the very beginning of commercial arcade that started with Periscope from Sega, but these things popped up all across America and elsewhere. You can see some great variety. Moto Polo, a motorcycle game, motocross game of some type, gunfight, sand buggy. On this one, the belt would roll and you would kind of navigate with the steering wheel left to right. Let's see what else. Air Attack, Moto Champ, there's a bunch of them. Lunar Rescue. So I'll stop here, but I want to give you just a view of this in case you're interested in arcade games at all, and I suspect many of you are. And from here, I'm going to jump into the next room in my house, and we'll have a quick look at the Commodore PET and a couple of other machines in and around it. Then we'll come back here for a quick tour of the rest of my collection. If there's anything you'd like to see on this channel, please post comments below. I've got a bunch of gear and I have some thoughts of the order in which I'd like to progress. And this is all, you know, what I think is of interest based on the prior videos that I've done. This Commodore 4032 PET was the first machine I got to use in schools. In my high school, they had a computer math class sometime around 10th grade, I think, maybe the first quarter of 10th grade. And they taught us basic programming and you know, some simple math on these machines. The school had invested in, I don't know, I'd say 8 or 10 of these, and they were all in a row with the external data set as you see here. And we each got to bring our own tape along and work on little projects and programs. Of course, there was no homework because the machines were only in school, but maybe you did some thinking about what you would do with these machines while you were home, hoping to someday own one of these. And in 1982, 1983, indeed, my dad bought me a Commodore 64. I bought this machine about maybe 4 years ago, beginning of COVID. And yeah, it's been working well. I do use it occasionally, but it sits here proudly in the corner of my little arcade room. Let me show you the rest of it. So there it is. This room I made my own, and I started doing things like cutting a hole in the ceiling on the wall to put lights, mounting fixtures and things I purchased over the years, like pinball play fields that I built up with lights, putting things along the wall that were reminiscent of arcades, such as that Star Castle marquee, which reminds me I need to cut a hole in the wall behind that. Oh, also, that's more like it. I have a few pinball machines in here, but I have a bunch of pinball machines outside, but these are my newest machines. Let me zoom out a bit. Okay. And then that's my newest machine. And there's some more memorabilia and whatnot on the walls. This is a good one. This is the original cartridge. I'll call it a cartridge. This is the original Excitebike cart that plugs into the back of a Nintendo, what do they call it? Play Choice 10. I just made that for the wall. And then finally, oh, there's another one. One of my favorite games, Marble Madness. And then finally, there's this multi-cade machine that I dressed up as a Robotron machine, and this 60-in-1 millipede machine that is just has a single board inside. So with that backdrop, let's jump in and talk about what we're really here to talk about, although I could talk all day about this stuff. Here in the computer room where I keep most of my gear is my Wall of Doom. This is where I do some of the videos for my channel, which I'm just starting, but I'm due to relaunch it, and I wanted to start with a quick tour of the gear that I own and have set up here. I should mention that I'm not alone in collecting things. Of course, most of us do collect. That's why you're here watching this, because you may collect or are starting to collect old computers. What's unique about what I have, I think, is that it's all up, active, and available to be used just about any point in time. So I don't have a lot of space here. I'll show you just quickly. This is a 10 by, I guess, 6 foot room, 10 by 7 foot room. And I have a number of keyboards. This desk surface such that it's a counter. It's packed. Not a lot of room, but I do reorganize it from time to time. I have a bunch of things on the wall, and this is my collection such that it is. So I have a mostly 6502 base machines. I have one 68,000 base machine here, and as I said, I share a lot of monitors and the sound in this room among all these different machines. So I'll give you a quick tour just to run through it. And these are some of the kind of preview of things that I'll be covering in this channel. as I get to creating more videos now. With the semester over, I'll have plenty of time for that. So this is the first game I played, this Choplifter by Broderbund, on an Apple II Plus, and I think it was an Apple II Plus that I used back in the 80s. My town library had an Apple II and a VIC-20. I've written about this in the newsletter, but this is an amazing game, and it the Apple used this analog joystick, which was kind of a byproduct of Steve Wozniak creating a paddle system for the Apple, which I'll get to at some point. It's very interesting, the kind of the history behind it. But you can see there my big mess of wires, SSD, and of course all retro computers these days it's helpful to have an SSD, and then the analog joystick. This is wired through a switch box that I can have a number of systems connected to, and I guess right now I probably only have, let's see, Commodore's? Yeah, Commodore's next. So I've got a Commodore 128, which is mounted on the wall here, and I have the ATARI 800XL as well. But that's just a quick kind of to get started. The Apple II, my Commodore 128 I just mentioned. Next to that I have a Foenix machine, which is a Foenix C256 U plus machine. And I have a video which I've shot a bunch of segments for already, which is going to kind of compare this to one of the older machines. And I'll talk about the newer machines as well. Next to that, I have a Commodore MiniPET. It's not a Commodore MiniPET, but it's like the Commodore PET, and it's made by, I guess, Tynemouth Software out of England. And this is one of the older versions. This is really just a 4032 PET. The newer ones do 80 columns. They do various ROMs and a bunch of other tricks up their sleeve. And you can see above that on the left, I have the IEEE SD card interface as well. Above that is my only kind of modern computer, which is this Raspberry Pi. I think it's a 3, and I use this just to connect to the net when I'm doing things like looking at PDFs or doing some research for my channel. It's connected to this monitor here. I have a serial port, rather a USB to serial, a dual serial port for accessing various systems, including the Raspberry Pi. And then I have a Commodore 16 on the wall, and below that is a Corsham Technologies KIM Clone, which is kind of a reimagined Commodore KIM or the MOS KIM 1 platform. And next to that, which I didn't turn this on, shame on me. Let's do this real quick, turn it on. Next to that is the KIM Uno, which was Oscar Vermeulen's creation. It's a Arduino, I believe, is what it is. It's an Arduino micro or nano or mini. It's a really small processor controller on a single board behind a bunch of buttons and some resistors. I'll turn this on as well. And this is essentially a full KIM clone. It's a very unique piece. You can see them on eBay for selling for $200, or you can send a bunch of PCBs into one of these PCB Express type places and have it made and solder, $5 worth of components on it to get yours running. I think under 20 bucks for the entire thing, not including the case. We'll talk about that at some point as well. I have a pile of these. If somebody wants one of these boards, I'll send it to you. I have 10 of them. I could send one out. I have extras. Just contact me. And then moving from there, I guess down to the desk itself. I've got my Commodore 128 keyboard, this is a D keyboard. This I purchased from Germany, and if you know the Commodore 128D, that's the kind of separate PC type case. It's not the integrated case. It's connected to this standard 128, which I mounted to the wall, and I kind of soldered up or built a little jig here that connects this DB25 keyboard connector from the keyboard up through to that braided connector, which is the standard one. Pretty straightforward to wire that up. A lot of doc online on how to do that. I have a Foenix F256 K with a cartridge, with a RAM expansion cartridge. So it has about 1.2 megs, I guess, of memory total at this point. It's got 512 of built-in RAM. It's got 512 of flash, and then another 256K of RAM. And this is kind of the display, this purple board from VCF last year. And on it, you'll see a couple of CPUs, which are available options for the F256K. On the upper left is the 6.5 6816 processor, which does not come with it, but it's an option. Otherwise, you can buy it for 20 bucks somewhere and install it yourself and put a new FPGA load into it if you're interested in coding with 24-bit memory access. On the right is the 6502 that comes with it. So that's just a standard Western Design Center 6502C, or 65C02. And then below it in purple is the FNX 6809, which is a FPGA-based Motorola code 6809 processor that also works in this system and in the F256 Junior. And that 6809 was an extremely powerful processor. It had 2 stacks, a bunch of new addressing modes, 16-bit registers. It didn't really get the notoriety that it probably deserves. But on the Foenix machine, you can install it and just write code yourself, or you can run Nitrous 9, which is a port of the OS 9 operating system developed by, I believe, Microware in the 80s and 90s. And Boise Pete is the person, the community member that developed or ported to the F256. So we'll be talking about that on this channel as well. Quickly moving over to the left here, underneath the Commodore keyboard is a Next keyboard. This is a Next Cube. I made reference to the 68040 or the 68,000 base machine that I have, and it's just one here in this kind of setup. This keyboard is connected to the C256 U Plus, which is this one here, not to be confused with the F256. And then finally, kind of attached, but not quite attached, is this ATARI 800XL on a card with Fujinet. And this Fujinet is somewhat unique. I'll cover this in the upcoming video. I got this from Poland. It's in a metal case. It's just a wonderful device. Has an external antenna. You can see just to the left of the SIO cable, there's an extra port, SIO port, which I have something special that I'll be sharing with in a future video. And then finally, over here where my desk ends, I have a makeshift setup here with my SX64, a monitor that's hard connected, and then below it, and that's a borrowed keyboard. I don't own one, unfortunately. And then below it, I've got a couple of drives, some that I'm working on, some that are just recently restored. Up on the wall, on the shelf, so to speak, we have a Commodore Plus 4 and a Commodore VIC-20. This is the original VIC-20, not the original gold label, but this is the one with the Commodore PET keyboard. So at a certain point, Commodore took their PET keyboards and started using them in the VIC-20, so it's somewhat unique, although you can find those. And then on the wall here, I've got a couple of framed or hung pieces. One is the manual, or the front page of a manual, kind of beat up, from a Motorola 6800 processor. And this is something that Bill Mensch actually signed for me, autographed. I ran into him at VCF a couple of years back and spent some time talking to him and his wife. Very nice people. Bill went on from Motorola to join or found MOS Technologies, which was acquired by Commodore. And of course, today Bill Mensch owns Western Design Center, who still produces 6502, 65816, and other processors, including 6522s and a bunch of other chips that we still use and depend upon for our retro machines. And then above that is the Pitfall Harry, or Programming Pitfall Harry. This is kind of a four-fold little pamphlet that Activision was I guess, giving to people that would send them a self-addressed stamped envelope. Maybe you have to send $1 with it, I'm not sure. But this is a little kind of program for the Commodore 64 you can type in that will animate a Pitfall Harry across the screen and make him, I think, run across the screen. And Robin from 8-Bit Show and Tell had an episode based on this. It's pretty interesting. I'll include that in the description below. And then we have kind of a pristine copy of Star Raiders, Atari Star Raiders, which was one of the earliest games that Atari released for their 800 and 400 machines. And that's actually on the 800 right now, running here. So quickly through monitors, I've got this Dell monitor is one of the best monitors to get for retro computers. It's got 4 inputs on it, and you're looking now at the RCA input. It's got VGA input, which my Next is connected to, DVI-D, which the Foenix is connected to, and I'll be talking about this exact build, this 65816 build or welcome screen that Stephanie uses on a lot of her kind of development when she's trying to port something to a new system. The Gen X falls into that category. and you'll see some of her videos. She'll talk a little bit about this. This kernel and the basic interpreter behind it was developed by Peter Weingartner, and he created Basic 816, which I'll talk about in a video where I feature the Foenix balloon. And I think that's probably it for what I have connected today. I have another switch box, which nothing on this video at the moment. What I will do is I'll turn on my Next, let this thing boot while I'm waiting. This is an amazing machine. I spent most of my career, early career, working on Unix machines. And this has the mock kernel, which is in every MacBook today. I'll let that come up. Of course, this box is a bit noisy. So, make this into a small data center. So, I guess finally, I'll say that this, I've got a kind of a shared Bose audio system wired up to a bunch of different things with another switch box. And then I've got a serial port network, which connects through these two DB25 switch boxes. I call them East and West. You can see I have a number of devices hard-coded on there, including local, which I'll plug into a system when I want to do something with it. I've got a DEC terminal that I'll use for connectivity for some of the work I do. I have a PIDP 8i build that I'm working on. And on the east side, I've got Apple, the 128, and a Wi-Fi modem. The 128 is connected with standard RS-232 serial port, not the Commodore modem, and that connects to this mangly DB25 cable, which I dub the information superhighway, and it runs down to the switch box. And I'll shortly have a video on serial port communications when I show a BBS and a terminal emulator that I've been developing for a while meaning about 40 years. I started this when I was a kid. So that's the quick run through. I don't know what else to say really, except I have a lot of stuff here. And the important thing to me is keeping it organized. And here of course is all the tools and connectors and parts. Then there's more connectors, parts, and all the things down there, including a 68030 Mac SE30, which I have to restore still. There's my DEC terminal, a bunch of other stuff. So anyway, that's about it. That's a quick run through of some of the gear that I have connected up and used from time to time, and I'll be creating a number of videos based on this gear. So please stay tuned for those, and we'll talk again soon.